name is Rashawn Smalls. I am the program manager for Advancing Tobacco-Free Communities, and I work for Chickatelli Associates, just short for CAI, which many know it as. We certainly are no strangers to G Health. We partner on a number of different initiatives. And today I want to talk to you about something that I think you're familiar with, that I'm sure that you are familiar with, but there are some things perhaps you may not be familiar with. And just want to share and even have a conversation at some point about an issue that I think is dear to me and then perhaps is even dear to others on this presentation right here. So with that, I want to just open it up, first of all, with a music piece by a young man by the name of Nassim Lewis, who was part of our youth movement, Reality Check.
This Nassim Lewis, better known as Gucci Scene from Reality Check. Me and Shot just dropped that new tweet going. Make sure y'all tune in. Power 96.5. But before I go, I just want to let y'all know that I thank you and I love y'all very much. And stay safe out here with this corona. Why are we the target? Advertising our community to artists with this vaping garbage. Yeah, they tryna take us away, they tryna take us away, they tryna smoke us away until we gone. Yeah, they tryna take us away, they tryna take us away, they tryna smoke us away until we gone.
85% black, menthol smokers, you tell me that, cause we being targeted, that's the fact. 8 billion in 2014 on advertisement, think about it, we been under attack.
Why are we the target? Why are we the target? Advertising our community to artists with this vaping garbage. Yeah, they tryna take us away, they tryna take us away, they tryna smoke us away until we gone. Yeah, they tryna take us away, they tryna take us away, they tryna smoke us away until we gone. And that's a reality check.
Correct. So I'm going to give a brief overview of the organization that I work for, CAI, which again is short for Chickatelli Associates. Talk a little bit about big tobacco's mindset. We're going to also talk about cigarette smoking and some of the consequences that come with cigarette smoking. We talk about the addictive nature of tobacco, specifically mentholated tobacco products or menthol tobacco products. We're going to talk about a statewide initiative or campaign that's taking place across New York State called Not Just Menthol, which speaks to how menthol as a product in tobacco is a social justice piece or issue. And we're going to just finish off with some Quitline information or cessation resources. And then we're just going to have an opportunity for some questions and answers. So CAI is a not-for-profit organization incorporated in 1979, so we've been around for about 42 years. I've been with the organization for about a year and a half now. The mission for CAI, in short, is to use the transformative power of education and research to foster a more aware, healthy, and compassionate and equitable world. Since its inception, CAI has tackled some of the most challenging issues facing vulnerable or priority populations, working to create health equity. And so we've also been at the center of training for state contractors across New York State who focus on tobacco control. So we occupied that capacity building role for 10 years. And as many of you perhaps know, because you've worked with other projects under CAI, like Reach Buffalo, which stands for Racial and Ethnic Approaches to Community Health. That's another project of CAI. We also have a project called Hope Buffalo, where we work on teenage pregnancy prevention. My specific project is called Advancing Tobacco-Free Communities. It's part of a statewide initiative. New York State has a chronic disease prevention agenda, and Advancing Tobacco-Free Communities falls under that chronic disease prevention agenda, specifically focusing on reducing tobacco use, reducing tobacco death and illness in New York State, and also working to create an environment that supports New York State's smoke-free norms. And so I'm going to dive right into this. And I want to preface it by saying that I hope that at some point this can be thought of as a safe space to share your experience related to tobacco. If in fact you do smoke or you know someone that smoked or someone who has suffered consequences from it. And I'm going to give someone an opportunity, if you don't mind, to actually read the statement or the quote that's on this particular slide. If someone would, please.
We don't smoke that shit. We just sell it. We just reserve the right to smoke for the young, the poor, the black, and the stupid. R.J. Reynolds, executive.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, this particular quote was pulled out of, there are tons of tobacco and thousands of pages of tobacco industry document which were obtained as a result of intense investigation on how the tobacco industry has marketed its product, tobacco. And so this quote comes from R.J. Reynolds, one of the top an executive for R.J. Reynolds. And many of you may know R.J. Reynolds as being famous for producing Newports, Pall Malls, and some other Camels as well, some cigarette products that are fairly common in specifically Newports in inner city communities. And the reality that it just reflects what I think is the attitude or the mindset, reserving the right for young. And we'll get into this a little bit later. Also the poor, the black, and the stupid. These are particular targeted audiences or targeted markets for tobacco use. So it's not coincidental when we go into later how these particular populations are adversely and disproportionately impacted by tobacco use. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about the consequences of tobacco use. In 2020, and tobacco use is estimated to have killed upwards of 500,000 people in the United States. 500,000 people. Over the last 2 years, we've seen COVID deaths amount to approximately 700,000 people. But when we talk about cigarette use and the deaths related to tobacco, this has been ongoing. So nearly 500,000 people in 2020. And in 2019, there was somewhere near 480,000. These are Center for Disease Control and Prevention data. So this highlights how serious it is. And certainly COVID is a serious issue. So we're consistently seeing high death rates. And this doesn't even include the amount of people who are affected or impacted just who live with tobacco-related illnesses. So we have people who are dying, but there's also millions of people who live daily with tobacco-related illnesses. My stepfather is one who's a person who smoked for 40 years, and he suffers today from stomach cancer as a result of his 40-plus year tobacco use. And so when we think about the different types or different forms of tobacco, one of the ones we talk about is combustible cigarettes, which you know is just your typical sort of cigarette. So when an individual engages in that type of smoking a cigarette, one of the things that one should be aware of is that with each puff of cigarette smoke, there's potentially over 7,000 chemicals that you're breathing in to your lungs. And this happens very quickly. And the blood that is then carried to the rest of the body contains these chemicals because tobacco smoke contains what is called carbon monoxide, which is a deadly gas that displaces the oxygen in your blood and depriving your organs of the oxygens that they need. So again, when you smoke or an individual smokes, they are consuming over 7,000 chemicals in their body. Many of these chemicals are known to be known carcinogens, and they are also many of them are known to be cancer causing. And as I mentioned again, I do have family members who currently have cancer as a result of smoking, and perhaps you even know. But certainly smoking combustible cigarettes is a deadly matter. We also talk about secondhand smoke. One of the things we talk about with regard to secondhand smoke is being around someone who smokes. So when a person who's smoking, that's obviously firsthand smoke. When we talk about secondhand smoke, it's the smoke that comes as a result of someone smoking. And generally, secondhand smoke also, if one is exposed to it, also comes with a number of health-related issues. In fact, when you talk about the U.S. Surgeon General has mentioned that there is no safe level of exposure to secondhand smoke. So anytime that you're around someone who is smoking, you put yourself at risk for a number of health-related issues, especially if you have some pre-existing conditions, like asthma, for instance. And one of the other things we talk about is third-hand smoke. Third-hand smoke is generally the residue that remains as a result of secondhand smoke. For instance, you see this taking place inside houses where individuals smoke. You'll see the walls, which are discolored as a result of continued use of smoking indoors. And this could be equally as harmful because it is ultimately breathed in as well and can impact one's lung health or other areas of your body. And the last piece I want to talk about and just highlight is what is known as electronic nicotine delivery systems, or what is commonly called or referred to as vaping or e-cigarettes. And this is promoted by the tobacco industry as a safer alternative to combustible cigarettes or what we know as regular cigarettes. And much research is still being done on the harmful effects, but what we do know is that there is some harm to the lungs as a result of vaping. And some e-cigarettes cigarettes have what is known as aerosol. And this is known to have been found or contained in these e-cigarettes. And these chemicals are the same chemicals that are found in cigarettes. So they do cause some sort of lung irritation containing what is called formaldehyde, which could also adversely affect your throat. So it's very important to also be aware that vaping or e-cigarettes can also cause significant harm to one's health as well. And just be mindful too that tobacco industry is marketed this particular product as a safer alternative to smoking. But you have to be careful, and you may even see a lot of youth nowadays who are using e-cigarettes. And part of the reason is because of the flavors, right? Tobacco industry has done a great job at marketing flavors like menthol or chocolate or vanilla or apple or strawberry. And all of this has been designed to attract youth, to target, attract, and addict people to a substance, which has been well documented, has known to cause significant harm and even death in many cases.
Menthol is not just in communities. It's aggressively marketed in Black communities. It's not just addicting. It's specifically addicting African Americans at higher rates. It's not just a flavor. It's a manipulative way for big tobacco to target us. And it's not just an injustice. It's dangerous. Smoking-related illnesses are the #1 cause of death in the African American community. And there's nothing just about it.
So this particular commercial was created because it's part of a larger campaign that's taking place throughout New York State. And you may have even heard some noise nationally. Or recently, the FDA decided that they, after being forced by a number of powerful tobacco control advocates, to ban mentholated tobacco products, menthol in cigarettes. So there's a proposal to ban on a federal level. We'll talk a little bit about this campaign in New York State. But I just want to highlight the fact that there is a campaign currently across the state of New York, which focuses on mentholated tobacco products and its specific impact on communities of color, specifically Black and Brown communities, and also other populations that considered to be priority populations. So when it comes to menthol, I do want to pose a question and ask, does anyone know what menthol is in terms of cigarettes? And that's an open question to anyone who might know.
Is that mint?
Menthol. It is mint. That's a great answer right there. So it is mint. So, and interestingly, it is commonly found in peppermints. You obviously all had peppermints before, or either or some other mint plants. So it can be found in toothpaste, in a variety of different products that we commonly use. But it's, I mean, and so when we think about mint, we don't necessarily think about cigarettes, but the reality is mint or menthol is a substance that has been added to cigarettes. And it was first done so back in the 1920s and the 30s. And so the interesting thing is that when it was done, the intent was to help reduce the harshness of cigarette smoke and the irritation from nicotine. So menthol makes it easier to inhale cigarettes deeply, which ultimately leads to bigger doses of nicotine and stronger addiction. So I don't know if anyone on the call actually smokes now or has smoked in the past. So when generally when you inhale cigarettes, if you haven't smoked mentholated tobacco cigarettes, there's a certain irritation that comes with cigarette smoke. I've experimented as a kid. I experimented, and you immediately feel it in your throat. But the interesting thing with mentholated tobacco products, there's a soothing or coolness that comes from smoking menthol or mentholated tobacco products. Right? We think of mentholated tobacco products. The first thing that should come to your mind is Newports. It is a mentholated tobacco products. Even Cool or Salem. These are tobacco products in which menthol has been added. And again, it makes it easier for you to inhale the nicotine and experience less irritation as a result. So that is a significant piece when we talk about how effective it is in attracting and causing strong addiction. So one of the things we want to focus on is this particular commercial speaks about how in the African American community, this product is extremely visible. Even in the Latino community as well, it's extremely visible. In fact, we talk about 85% of Black smokers, 85% of Black smokers smoke mentholated tobacco products. 85%. You talk about nearly 50% of the Latino or Hispanic population as well. And it even increases, that number increases when you get into like the subpopulations or like the Puerto Ricans. There's an even higher percentage of individuals who smoke mentholated tobacco products. And it's not coincidental. You can go around your neighborhood. You can go around your barrio. You can go on the east side of Buffalo, on the west side of Buffalo. And in these communities, you'll see a plethora of just an abundance of advertisement that specifically markets mentholated tobacco products, right? You can go right down to the corner store and you walk into your store and you'll be bombarded with specific mentholated tobacco products. I've done observations, and I'm sure that your observation too would confirm that this is a heavily marketed product in our community. So when you talk about menthol, it is that flavor that is added to tobacco products that when it is added, it allows for the individual to inhale the product more deeply, and the more deeply you inhale, the stronger the addiction, right? And so it's very important to know that this particular substance is there because it is intended to get more smoke in you and to increase strengthen the addiction, if you will. And so, as we talked about why this should be a concern, I spoke earlier about nearly 45,000 Black people a year in this country die as a result of tobacco-related illnesses. 45,000. You think about it, that is more than homicides in this country. That is more than accidents in this country. And that is more than a number of other issues that are promoted, that are sensationalized in media, but very little discussion is being given to it simply because I mean, it is what I tend to dub it as a silent killer. It is not the sexy story, if you will, something to be sensationalized. But the reality is, it is killing communities of color, communities where you work, perhaps even live. Um, and I think it is important to just raise awareness about it, and even I would even assess for it more frequently, to be more sensitive to the fact that people are engaging in this, that people are, and we often we do look at it as an addiction. It is something that we think about as an addiction. Nicotine is perhaps one of the most addictive substances to be found. And it is not an easy substance to or habit to kick. But it's even complicated, more serious when you add in the flavor of menthol or other flavors that attract individuals to smoke and individuals to continue to smoke it. And so I mentioned also, we talked about this statewide campaign to remove menthol from shelves. As I mentioned, and I won't go over it again, but I mean, there is a significant health issue in our communities. I'm not sure what the percentage is of individuals who actually access services at G Health, but my guess is that the population that you serve, there is a high rate of cigarette use, a high rate of menthol use, mentholated tobacco use. And so this is a significant issue, which is why there is a statewide campaign to remove mentholated tobacco products off the shelf as a way of what the data suggests that will help save lives. We talked about data suggesting that nearly 4 out of 10 Black smokers would try to quit if that was done. And so it's extremely important to think about in terms of the impact that it's having on the people that you serve and that you work with every day, who perhaps may not let you know that they smoke, but in fact do smoke. And that is extremely impacting or having a negative effect on their health, and probably even complicating some other pre-existing conditions. And so one of our partners that we do work with is New York State, the Quitline, Roswell, Cessation. They have a tremendous, a number of tremendous people who work the Quitline and offer great resources for individuals who are struggling to quit, who would like to quit. And the great thing about the state of New York when it comes to cessation resources is that there is no limited amount of attempts that, to quitting it, as opposed to some other states, there are limited resources. But in New York State, there's great resources in terms of if an individual wants to quit and has tried 3, 4, 5 times, he can try 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 more times, or she can try, or they can try as many times as they want, because that is just the nature of the system in terms of providing cessation resources. So with the New York State Quitline, we have the website here is newyorksmokefree.com. The number is also here. When an individual calls this number, they are immediately have access to professional quit coaching. You will have support and access to nicotine replacement therapy, the gum and patches. And again, there is no limit. So an individual may come and say, well, I've tried 3 or 4 times already. The interesting thing is that, that is not uncommon. And you can always tell an individual, well, you can try again. And that individual would also be able to continue to receive the sort of support that they may need in order to eventually kick the habit, what we really hope for. I think I neglected to mention when I first started is that my work specifically is on policy change in terms of I work with elected officials, state and local elected officials, are seeking to educate and mobilize them with the goal of creating an environment that is supportive of policy change in terms of tobacco. So when you think about the playgrounds that you visit, you know, in Buffalo, we're fortunate to have a citywide ordinance which supports tobacco-free outdoors. I also do work in multi-housing units. I work with property owners and um, property managers around the issue of adopting tobacco-free, smoke-free housing. One of the things we do know is that a number of priority populations live in multi-housing units. And we talk about secondhand smoke. That is a major issue in housing. And so, you know, my goal is to create as many spaces where people can live and not be exposed to secondhand smoke. So I do work in multi-housing units around smoke-free. I also work with, I mentioned, smoke-free housing, tobacco-free outdoors, and we also work with employers around the issue of smoke-free work sites, because we believe that where you live, where you work, where you play should not be death sentences. That these should be safe spaces, especially for kids whose lungs are healthy and growing and should not be exposed to secondhand smoke. And my final thought to this right here, and the organization I work for is a great organization, and we're proud to say that we support Black Lives Matter. And I always say that, if Black Lives Matter, then our Black lungs also have to matter. If Black Lives Matter, then our lungs also have to matter. So it's important that we raise awareness about this and other issues concerning health equity. And, and in so much as that we do, CAI is certainly a partner of that effort right there. So with that right there, I just want to open it up for any thoughts or questions that anyone may have.
Menthol, did they take it off the market?
No, so interestingly, several months ago, it's a great question, thank you. The FDA, Food and Drug Administration, has started the process for banning or not banning, taking menthol off the shelves. But that process is a slow, long, arduous process, which could take years to do. Obviously, you don't have some interference from the tobacco industry. But if you recall, back in 2009, then President Barack Obama had removed all flavors from cigarettes, but the flavor that is causing the greatest impact in communities of color was allowed to remain in that flavor. If you guessed menthol, you'd be guessing correctly. Menthol is the king flavor in cigarettes. So all the flavors were taken out of cigarettes except menthol. The tobacco industry fought hard, and they were successful at keeping menthol in cigarettes. And not coincidentally, that is the flavor that is causing the greatest impact in communities. So, the fight continues. Yes, the FDA did decide that they would remove it, but it is a long and arduous task. And so we're continuing to stay vigilant.
We want to thank you for coming on, and I'm sure you're going to email me some next steps that our company can take.
Yes.
Seems like this fight has been going a long time. I'm not going to say how long, but I remember going to the store buying my mother cigarettes, menthol. So
yeah,
it's
you
been a
know
long
that.
fight, and we're still in it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes, I remember, just a personal note, I'm 47, right? So I'm going to say it. But I remember when I was a kid, cigarettes used to be on the counter, and we used to go, and there was this new product they came out with called Lucky, I think Lucky Strikes or something like that. You may recall that. And it didn't last long, but it was on the counter, and we go in the store and take them, and as kids we go and smoke. We didn't know any better. Similar to the vaping phenomenon, there is constantly evolving, and they're gonna try to make it as accessible as possible to our kids, and we have to we have to be, thoughtful about that and how we protect our kids. When we were growing up, in my generation, if you grew up in, the 80s or the 90s, you remember the candy cigarettes. You put them in and blow them and the smoke come out. And the gum was nasty though. So, but it was about, making it hip and making it attractive to kids. And they did a successful job because, the average smoker today is starts smoking at the age of 13. The average smoker starts smoking at the age of 13. So if you have a 13-year-old kid, if you have a 12-year-old, 14-year-old, that is the prime time for, that is what tobacco industry is marketing to.
Well, I think this is going to end our conversation. Great presentation, a lot to think about. We
Thank
do
you.
currently work with Roswell as a partner in this. We'll add you to our partners. And as I said, you will definitely probably be giving me some next steps that we can take in the fight against
Yes,
menthol.
definitely. And I appreciate all your time and your effort, and definitely want to, again, express my gratitude to you, Ava, for allowing for me to give the presentation, and all of you who are here today. Thank you.